So you're thinking about moving to Houston, Texas, and you're wondering, is it really as inexpensive as everyone says? Well, we're going to cover all the different costs of living, some things you expected, some things you probably didn't, and really give you a good insight to how they do these national averages and how they compare costs. Because once you start breaking it down into some of the different neighborhoods, you get a much better picture of what really you get for your money. And so we're going to do a deep dive. We're going to talk about Houston, then we're going to do a deep dive in our favorite inner loop neighborhood, the Houston Heights. So if that's what you're here for, we'll get after it right now. Hey everybody, I'm Kerry Fletcher and this is
Mims.
And together we're Drew Kerry. Come on, I know it's a little cheesy, but it helps people remember it. So if you're new to this channel, this is all about what's it like to live here in Houston, Texas. Eat, sleep, drink, where are the cool places to go, be married, work, you name it. And take the time, go ahead and hit that subscribe. If that's what you're looking for, go ahead and take the time to hit that subscribe button, ring that little bell. That way you're notified every time we put out a new video. And, and whenever you do get ready to make that decision, whenever you want to come visit the great city of Houston and the great state of Texas, give us a call, send us an email, send us a text message. If you want to, you can even send it via Pony Express. Any which way you want to reach us, just reach out to us and we've got your back. Now, let's get into cost of living. So if you go to, there's any number of different websites, any number of different research places, but the one that we use the most often, because they break it down into metro areas and into the cities, is Best Places. We'll put a link to it down there. But basically they rate everything on a scale of 100. So if you had $100 to spend on a certain item, that would represent the middle or the median across all of the United States. So overall, Drew, do you think Houston, you've seen some of the numbers, do you think Houston is a more affordable or less affordable place to live overall?
I think it's a very affordable option.
Okay.
Especially compared to a lot of the coastal states.
Yeah. So you guys are going to have to forgive me. I've got my handy dandy notebook here because I cannot remember all these statistics off the top of my head. But let's go overall. Houston, compared to the rest of the United States, comes in at a 96.5. So it's in the lower half or the lower median.
Very affordable. Very
affordable, especially when you talk about urban areas, because urban areas have a tendency to be a lot more expensive than most of your rural. And the fact that you have the fourth largest city in the United States coming in under that median, that's pretty impressive. Now, when you look at Houston though, Houston overall, even if you just look at the Houston city limits, that covers, I don't know how many miles, right? It's a wild expansion. You've got a large variety of...
Gosh, you can drive an hour and a half and still be in Houston.
Yeah. So let's take a look at the Houston Heights area and how it compares. So overall, it comes in at a 130. So slightly above average, but still not very...
What does that compare to, say, to San Francisco?
All right. So San Francisco comes in, well, I don't have overall numbers, but for their housing, they come in at a 596. So... And significant. And places like New York, up close to 300, like 294. Wow. So you're talking about
100% difference.
Even if you're looking at one of the best neighborhoods here in Houston, or one of the better neighborhoods here in the Houston Heights, or one of the more expensive ones, you're still looking at a very, very affordable place to live. So let's get into it. So healthcare cost. If you were to guess healthcare cost, Drew, what would you think? Do you think healthcare is more expensive here in Houston on average, or do you think it's less expensive?
I think it's less expensive. We have such a large medical center here
Yeah,
that I would guess that it's less expensive.
it is. It comes in at 92.4. So again, you're talking about urban versus rural. It's actually one of the better attributes is healthcare costs are lower here. And you say the Texas Medical Center. Tell me something about it. I mean, what makes it so special?
Well, I mean, we have one of the largest. I'm not the statistician the way that Kerry is. I don't have all the factual numbers, but people fly in from all over the world just to get treatment at MD Anderson for cancer, for example. And there's just a huge complex of doctors. And now, most of the major hospitals systems like Methodist, St. Luke's, Memorial Hermann all have campuses in all of the major suburbs now as well. But the medical center is just, I don't even think anywhere else probably compares.
So, Drew knows this, you guys may not know this, but I used to travel the world in a medical profession, in a medical capacity, and the Texas Medical Center right here in Houston is the largest medical center in the world, bar none. And largest by number of beds, largest by square foot or square acreage, largest by number of specialties. And so you have this economies of scale here in Houston that you don't have in other places. And Drew pointed it out. People fly in all over for MD Anderson. People fly in from all over the world for almost any kind of specialized or advanced healthcare treatment here. And because we live here, we get to have the benefits of that.
That's true.
And also, if you're ever looking for a place where you want to work, or you want to be involved, or you want to invest, or you want to be a part of a medical community, there's no better place than Houston for it. And the Heights is super, super convenient if you wanted to live here and either go in for treatment or work there. So let's talk about groceries. So what sort of advantages, disadvantages, what sort of costing do you think Houston would have as far as groceries or food costs?
I think it's probably pretty competitive.
Yeah.
I would think that prices would be pretty
So 98.1
affordable.
overall in Houston. So 98.1.
Not bad.
Not bad. Again, you're talking about
Below
a
the
major
average.
urban area. Fourth largest city in the United States, slightly below average. And what about the Heights? What do you think? It'd be more expensive, less expensive than overall?
The Heights is probably a little bit more expensive than other parts of Houston, versus suburbs.
Right.
And that's just, I think, because the land cost is more here. So you've got higher rents, higher mortgages for the vendors, and so
Higher rental costs.
yes.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to pass that on in the prices, I think, for convenience. I mean, we're not driving out to the burbs to do our shopping.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So it does come in slightly higher, but it's very mild. It's only a 105. So you're talking 98 to 105. So it's very, very mild. But what about some of the stores here in the Heights? I mean, what do you get for that extra, couple of bucks a year in convenience?
Convenience?
Yeah.
We've got a pretty good selection. We've got a large two-story HEB. I think it might even be the largest HEB that there is on North Shepherd. Just on the other side of the freeway in Garden Oaks, just on the edge of the Heights. We've got a Whole Foods 365. There's an Aldi if you're looking for a more affordable shopping experience. And then there's a large Kroger that's been fully updated and remodeled. That's at the corner of Shepherd and 11th. And then, there's some local places like Heights Grocer where you can order great organic wine.
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah, that's a great little specialty one, Heights Grocer. Look them up online. They've got a great little Instagram page and Facebook page, but if you want to just go and find something eclectic, out of the ordinary, the Heights Grocer is a great spot. It's not covered in groceries, but one of the things that I think is super important when it comes to affordability is the Total Wine and More, the new Total Wine and More that they put in down at what's called the Lower Heights.
Yeah, so there's lots of smaller liquor stores,
Sure.
within the Heights that are local, and then of course now there is a big box, which was a little bit controversial when they came in.
but I assure you the prices there are just blow everything else away. It doesn't matter what you're looking for on a price for the same item, there is going to be much more affordable than it is anywhere else.
But we're not here to talk about.
But we're not here to talk about that. Okay.
I don't want to know.
Sure. So let's talk about housing. So of the cost overall, both for the city of Houston and for the Heights, what do you think housing would factor in? Very important, less important, most important?
What do you mean?
So how big of an impact do you think housing has in the overall cost of living when it's rated in?
Well, pretty big because the cost of land is so high.
Exactly. Now, Houston comes in at a whopping 80.2.
Which is very low.
Right. And you nailed it, right? It's the cost of land. Houston, because it's so large, it's not restricted by anything. The cost of land to expand and to grow and to put in new developments is relatively low. So an 80.3. But when you look at the Heights is pretty constricted. We're all here within this inner loop, this 610 loop. And the housing here comes in at 191. So it's more expensive than when you look at Houston overall. But when you look at, call it that inner loop neighborhoods, it's still very, very affordable.
It's still affordable in comparison to West U, River Oaks. There's some other neighborhoods that it's definitely more affordable. And also, the convenience that you get and not having to commute, for us, we enjoy, although let's face it, most people are working from home right now.
All people.
And we're actually with a cloud-based company, which is great. But for most people who are commuting or that have a commute, it's a big life sacrifice, right? Are you going to spend 2+ hours a day in your car driving, or are you going to spend it, at home with your family in the mornings and the evenings? So, there's a premium that you're going to pay for sure to live in town, but it's also, I think, quality of life and having those experiences that you can't get back.
So factored into, or let's say not factored into the cost of housing is taxes. So before we leave that, Houston Heights, and we'll get into it in the transportation, commute, reverse commute, comes in at 191, but West U, their cost of housing comes in at a 448.
Woo, that's high.
At a median household purchase price of just over $1 million. And Memorial and the Villages comes in at a 378 with about an $900,000 median price. So all those things you're looking at as far as convenience, commute, cost of land, good neighborhoods.
And there's advantages that go with those, but that you're paying for schools and West U is its own little city within a city.
But on affordability,
department.
This is one of the best balances of affordability and nice neighborhoods, right?
Agreed. Yes.
Okay.
Why do you like the Heights?
It's, I described it in one of my other videos. The Houston Heights it's like living in Austin without having to deal with all the ostentatiousness, if you will. I know that's a little bit crazy, but it's got the arts community. It's got the music, the live music community, the historic homes. You just have such a blend of different architecture and everything from 1920s cottages to modern farmhouses to total modern art. And
you mean architecture?
Yeah, architecture. Yeah, so
art.
Well, okay, architecture. And then you also have the lifestyle of our kids get to ride their bikes to school or ride their bikes to work and into these little local grocery store or local.
There are a lot of community
bakeries.
events too. So I think there's a real sense of community in the Heights that you don't necessarily find in other neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. There are large annual events that are held here every year, like White Linen Night, where everybody dresses up in white linen and it's like
Lights
a big block party. And a lot of the businesses get involved, and it's a lot of fun, and everybody gets out, and there really is just a strong sense of community and getting to know other people. And December lights in the Heights.
That's my favorite community activity. I
Which is
love
just,
it.
it's so much fun. So I would, if you're looking into the Heights, I would definitely Google those two events. And then they've got Saturday markets and, outdoor markets and farmers markets on the weekend. And there's just always something going on.
So let's transition from housing cost to taxes, because housing cost, taxes, especially here in Texas, that for those of you who don't live in Texas, they're intertwined. Now, what is the absolute best news for anybody thinking about moving to Texas or Houston, Texas?
We have no state income tax.
Woo-hoo! No state income tax.
Which is a big deal.
It's huge.
We have
right?
sales tax,
Yeah.
8.25% when you buy things.
Right. So it's much more of a tax philosophy of consumption rather than production, right? We're going to tax you when you buy things, sell. But even that, it's not unreasonable. You're talking about a 8.25% sales tax.
Yes.
And property taxes. So let's talk about property taxes, because property taxes is what funds things like the Med Center, funds the schools, funds the Port of Houston, funds a lot of these other things. So the tax rate, do you know what it is off the top of your head for this Houston area?
On a whole?
Well, let's call it the Heights.
Is it 2.31?
2.415. 2.415.
Close.
So just easy math. If you have, was it $100,000 house, you're going to spend about $2,415 on taxes every year. Or $1 million house, $24,000.
But you will save on your homestead exemption. So everybody that, if it's your first house, but you do have to get your driver's license changed so that your address is reflected on your driver's license. That's super important little technicality, but one not to forget for sure. But as long as you're living in the property as of January 1st of that year, then you are eligible to file for your homestead exemption, which will save you about roughly 20% on your tax bill. Now, if you're over 65, you also get an additional exemption. And if you buy a house, let's say mid-year, and the people that you buy it from already have a homestead exemption on the property, the exemption will stay with the property for that year, so you will also get the benefit of that. But if you buy a new construction home like we did, then you don't there's no exemption, but you also get the benefit of a lower tax bill that first year because
it's taxed on land, not on the building.
Right.
Okay. So what is the scenario, or maybe I should just explain the scenario that I think is the one thing that you kind of need to look out for, is if you're buying a house that wasn't owner occupied or didn't already have the exemption. Say somebody owned it and was using it as a rental and then decided to put it on the market. That would be one of the few scenarios that I would think of where you wouldn't have the homestead exemption.
It would be considered non-exempt.
Right. And
you would have to wait until the following year to file. So starting January 1st of the next year, you could then file with the Harris County Appraisal District, which is super easy to do. You can even do it online now.
I was literally going to ask,
in fact,
how hard is that?
We send out everybody who buys a house with us, that works with us, but we help each year. We send a reminder with a copy of the form to fill out, and you can even submit it online now.
It's
super easy.
This year they actually made an improvement, and so you can do it online on your phone. They've got a little phone app, and so I sent that out to all my clients this year, and we were able to knock it out. Now, there's another thing that you do for your clients when it comes to taxes, and that is every year, whenever the new appraisals come around and the new assessments come around, what do you do to help them out?
So, sometimes HCAD will increase the value of properties a little too high, and it's not necessarily founded on market value. They have their whole own way of coming up with numbers, and so we often help our clients to We don't actually do the protesting, and that's not,
No,
we're
we
not
don't do
professional
that, no.
protesters. But we are always here and happy to help people, to provide comps, to help get that tax appraisal down so that your bill is lower and you save money.
And while we can never recommend just one person, we have a small number of people that we recommend.
We've got a group of people that we like to recommend that do a really good job. So
Do a really good job. Now, we were talking about taxes and talking about assessments, and also talking about the cost of living here in the Heights. One of the things, just out of curiosity, the 10-year, year-over-year improvement on property, what do you think that's been over the last 10 years here in the Heights? The appreciation.
10 years.
10 years, appreciation. About 62%. So you're talking about a 62%
That sounds about right.
here in the Heights, which means it's generally a pretty good. What about land? Raw land, as if you wanted to buy something at lot value. What do you think the price has gone to the appreciation?
Doubled.
138%, so more than doubled. So 138% over the last 10 years. So even though it's relatively expensive now, than Houston General, not some of the other parts of Inner Loop, it has been a very good return on investment over the last 10 years with no depreciation and a good steady year-over-year appreciation, right?
Yes, very much so.
So whenever you have that kind of year-over-year appreciation, when it comes to assessing the value and the taxes, it's super important that you protest it and that you work on
Absolutely.
not overpaying, because there are times when Harris County and Houston try to increase your taxes or the value even faster than what the market's going.
We're all about saving money.
Yeah, all about saving money. So, utilities. Let's talk about utilities. You think utilities are more affordable, less affordable?
You talking about like gas, electric?
Gas, electricity,
So-
internet could be one.
So the amazing thing about Texas is that back in 2002, we had deregulation of all of the electric companies. And so you're able to shop for your electricity and you can get the best rate. And there's a phenomenal website called powertochoose.org. So powertochoose.org is an amazing resource, and you can actually go online and look at all of the different providers and choose. And you can actually get as granular as, okay, I would like my energy to be from renewable sources, and you can look at the percentage of where they're getting their green energy from. Is it solar? Is it wind? What's the percentage? If you want a year's contract, if you want month to month. And the rates are all over the place, but there's different factors, right? Like what's your base to consider, like what's your base fee? What's the cancellation fee if you were to move out of state and unable to transfer it to your new address, that sort of thing. We picked a company that just has a very low cancellation fee, and we prefer to do a fixed rate each year. That's what works for us. But you may want to opt for a different plan. So that's been a really wonderful thing, I think, here for most people.
Yeah, and you'll hear in all these different commercials, all these different gimmicks about free nights and weekends, free highest usage day, and it's
like phone service.
Yeah, it's like a good news, bad news, right? Good news, it's deregulated, everybody's competing, therefore you get the best price. Bad news is oftentimes they just try to confuse what you're actually getting and how you're getting paid. And that's why the powertochoose.org is such a great spot to go to.
I recommend actually opening up the contract and looking at it, because you can see, and it will compare plans. Like you can pick, I think, multiple plans and then compare them to each other. So great resource.
Yeah.
But I think I would guess that utilities are pretty affordable compared to the rest of the nation.
Yeah, coming in at about 96.4.
It's pretty good.
So, and then there's really not a distinguishable difference between, a lot like healthcare, there's not a distinguishable difference between Heights and the broader Houston. Now, one of the other ones, transportation.
Oh, except for we forgot to point one thing out.
What?
Well,
in utilities?
yeah, because in the suburbs they've got
Oh my gosh, yeah.
MUD districts, which stands for municipal utility districts. So when they build these new neighborhoods, they've got to go in and put in all new
Water treatment
sewage,
plants,
water.
sewer plants, piping.
And so all of that costs, it's very expensive to do that. And so in these MUD districts, they're passing the cost on back to the homeowner. So when you buy a new home, or a home until it's paid off. So the price gets reduced each year, but until that's paid off, that's an extra tax that you have. So sometimes in the suburbs, your tax rate will actually be higher than in town, because when you're inside the loop, or for the Heights, for example, you're on public water, public sewer, you're not having to pay for that new infrastructure that they've had to put in,
So
which is a great advantage.
great advantage on the cost. Now, if you're buying a home here in the state of Texas or in the Houston area, isn't there a separate addendum or a separate attachment that addresses that?
Well, there's a whole disclosure. So anybody selling a
Disclosure.
house has to disclose the fact that it's in a MUD district, and tell you, what the fees are, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So does it show up like a utility bill, or does it show up like a tax?
It's part of your tax bill.
It's part of your tax bill. Okay.
So you just pay it at the end of the year with your taxes, property taxes.
Property taxes. So it's like a bond, a municipal bond. Okay. So good catch. Thank you for remembering that. I was going right on into transportation. So transportation here in the city of Houston, above average, below average,
Probably below average.
below average. It is in the city of Houston more expensive, $119, just slightly. So if you think about the city of Houston, why would you think it would be more expensive? Do you think it'd be the cost of gas?
No, cost of gas is pretty low here. I think we're definitely on the lower spectrum compared to the rest of the nation.
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of fender benders here.
Yes.
There's a lot of traffic.
Yes.
Although it's been a lot better during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Although we noticed that people seem to have forgotten how to drive.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a good point when you bring up the fender benders. Actually, insurance, the cost of car insurance
Very pricey.
is expensive in the city of Houston relative to the rest.
Especially when you have teenagers.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that is you have a large population that doesn't have car insurance, so the rates
That's true.
go up.
Very true.
What are some other factors, do you think? What about all these toll roads? Do you like the toll roads?
Well, typically I like them just to be able to get around.
Yeah.
Houston has 3 loops. So there's the inner loop, which is the 610 loop.
It's not a toll road.
Right, it's free. It's been
right.
there forever. Well, not forever, but
Right.
it's been around my whole life. And then there is the Beltway 8 that I remember them building, I think, when I was in high school. And then there's a 3rd loop now that wasn't complete. I mean, it was completed not that long ago.
Yeah.
The Grand Parkway,
They're still
and
working
that
on it,
is
yeah.
all the way out in the Katy area, as far west as Katy.
And as far north as Spring,
Yes,
the Woodlands.
and so
But then you also have like the Hardy Toll Road and the West Park.
So if you
and,
want to go from one major suburb to another, and you're, on the outer band of Houston, being able to hop on the Beltway or Grand Parkway, to me it would be worth it to pay that, or if I were commuting, because you're going to have less traffic.
But it does make it a little bit more expensive when you're talking about
Oh,
transport.
absolutely, absolutely. So living inside the loop, unless you're have somewhere to go, or you're, doing some sort of reverse commute, you don't have to pay any tolls. It's great, because in town there aren't any.
Well, even that, when you talk about the reverse commute, and let's spend a little bit of time talking about that. It's something that we talked about in one of our other pros and cons of interloop living, that reverse commute. I'm sure that you have some clients and some stories about people who have decided to move out of the inner loop, out, sort of chasing their job out into the suburbs, and then end up having to kind of move all over.
So we have, I have a set of what I like to call serial clients, and they're dear, dear friends. But they lived in the Heights, and they decided they wanted to have a little bit more elbow room and a little more green space. And so they bought a house out in Spring, loved it, on a full acre, no back neighbors. I mean, they would see deer behind them, watch the sunset, had the big pool, beautiful spread. And then he switched companies.
Yeah.
And instead of working downtown or Galleria area, he was suddenly found himself working in the energy quarter. And the commute was just unbearable.
Oh, brutal.
And so at that point, they decided to move to the Fulshire Katy area because they still wanted to be able to have a larger yard. And they went down to like a half-acre lot. Again, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. No back neighbors again. Stunning home.
But then had to move to Greenway Plaza.
And then he got, so it's you can chase it. And sometimes the further out you go, really like the commute time can be brutal.
But if you're living in that inner loop area, that reverse commute is pretty easy. You can get from the inner loop to during a reverse commute out to Katy in 30-45 minutes, out to Energy Corridor.
And right now
20 minutes.
Yeah, right now it's not terrible. And some people don't mind a commute, they listen to their books on tape or they've got their podcasts they listen to. And so some people it doesn't bother. We're not those people. We personally love living in the Heights and love the convenience. We get to spend more time with each other, with family and friends, and that's what's important to us. And so we're willing to, pay a premium to do that.
So transportation for the Houston Heights is actually $113. So that's a little bit less expensive than the broader Houston. And what do you think would be the major driving factor for that?
Well, you're not having to drive as far, and
so the public transportation. We do have, while we don't have this great subway like New York or some of these other places.
we have a pretty good bus system, and we do
pretty
have a
good
light
bus-
rail, although it's, it's somewhat limited.
Yeah.
But they have just put in a fabulous new, actually a whole bus commuting system for the Galleria area.
Right.
With its own dedicated lane that goes across 610 between I-10 and 59. And that's a whole nother video.
Yeah, it's a whole other video. But basically, the way I've heard it described, it's designed to function like a light rail, but utilizing the efficiency of buses rather than a light rail, because it's got their own dedicated lanes, their own dedicated transport. And if you've ever been in the Galleria 610, starting at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and going till about 7 o'clock in the evening, it's just...
It can be crazy.
It can be crazy. It can be a nightmare.
And the beauty of the new bus system is that it's almost like being on a subway platform. You just step right on to the bus, because the bus stop is the same level.
Yeah.
And so you're not having to climb up if you've got issues.
But they also started putting some of those in over on Cavalcade there in I-45, right around there. So that sort of covers the expenses for today as far as the breakdowns and the do's and don'ts. What Drew and I would like to do is transition from here and let's go take a look at some of the houses. So some of the numbers, because housing is so expensive and because it seems to be the largest investment, let's just break down a few of the numbers. So within the Heights, Greater Heights area, there's currently 54 homes listed at $1 million and above.
Are we going to take a look at some of those today?
Yeah, we will. But I just wanted to go over some of these numbers before we hop in. There's only one listed above 2 million. So if you're coming from Los Angeles, if you're coming from San Francisco, if you're coming from New York or, lots of places here in the United States, $1 million house, if you can imagine a $2 million house is the absolute most expensive house in the whole Heights area. And the average price per square foot is between $285 and $485 a square foot. There's only 53 homes listed between $750,000 and $1 million, with the average price per square foot being $219 to $443. There's 125 homes listed between $575,000, so more than double the other two categories, with a price per square feet of $173 to $580. $580 a square
span.
foot. So what do you think's driving that $580 per square feet?
The land.
No, older homes.
Oh, you're talking about the older homes.
Older homes, yep.
Smaller homes on larger lots.
Right.
Because the old bungalows that were originally built here are, you might have an 1,100 square foot house, or sometimes even smaller,
Right.
but on a really nice lot. And so the price per square foot is going to go way up.
Yeah, especially if it's been nicely done and nicely renovated. Well, I'll tell you what, we have enjoyed this. We're going to hop into the car. We're going to drive around and show you how far that dollar will go and take a look at some of the architecture and some of the things here in the neighborhood. Let's do it. Let's do one of those jump cuts. Let's do it now. So this is one of the first houses we're going to take a look at it. It's right here at 331 Arlington, 331 West 26th Street, right here at the intersection of Arlington and 26th. But I'm going to pan around here. It's a brand new construction. Now, Drew, what do we call this? We call this a modern farmhouse style?
Probably a cross between a craftsman and
Cross between a craftsman. Brand new construction. What's the square footage on the house?
4230.
4,230, 2-story. What size of the lot is it? 6,360. New construction, good fencing. One of the things that I love about this particular neighborhood and this house is you've got alleyway access back here. Let's see if we can see it. Alleyway access, plus you have, and that alleyway access gives you a 2-car garage, also with a garage apartment above it. Beautiful back porch. Nice overall landscaping. And then here's just a brief pan around of the neighborhood and some of the areas. Again, this is right here on the intersection of 26th and Arlington. You get a nice collection of different homes here in this area. And the list price on this is just over 1.32 million. That's 1.32 million. So this is what a $2+ million listing here in the Heights looks like. So the specifics of it are that it was built in 2017. It has 6,814 square feet, double verandas, and on a 9,900 square foot lot. So that right there is the most expensive home currently on the market in the Heights.
All right, this is 307 Aurora, and it's listed for 1.4 million. It has 4188 square feet on a 6,000 square foot lot, and it is brand new construction. The contract, so we want to show you what a $765,000 house looks like. Can you pull a little bit closer, Kerry? Oh, yeah, there we go. It has 2,088 square feet on a 3,423 square foot lot with some extra parking.